Hi, friends. Welcome to Holy Week. I don't know if you're like me. The churches where I grew up didn't make a habit of celebrating Holy Week. It is really nothing more or less than the last week of the life of Jesus Christ. Depending on how you separate it, maybe Sunday to Sunday, including all those days, starts on Palm Sunday, ends on Easter. Whatever the case is, it is a Holy Week recognized by all of Christendom throughout the ages. During this time of separation, I think it's more important than ever for us to stay connected, but especially to stay connected with Jesus and to know and remember how loved and how secure we are. We're going to be doing daily video blogs. This is the first of a series, each from a different perspective about some event in the Holy Week period in the last week of Jesus' life. Each will be tackled by a different staff member, and I'm looking forward to seeing these myself. Also, we'll be including daily worship opportunities. I hope that you're going to set aside some time, find some time each day this week for Holy Week reflection and worship. Holy Week technically began yesterday with the triumphal entry, and I already took care of that. If you missed that message, it's out there in lots of different places, so check out the message about the triumphal entry. I'm actually going to back up one day. I'm going to back up to Saturday night. So we're going to jump a little bit back before the technical beginning of Holy Week, but it's a scene that is tightly tied in. And we're going to read about this. We find this episode from the Saturday night dinner, John chapter 12, verses 1 to 11. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of this perfume. But one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was meant that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there, and they came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priest made plans to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. I love this story, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have this particular slot was because I'm just amazed at what we see happening here. We have Jesus among friends. I like that picture. I think Jesus loved to spend time with good friends. And among those, Martha is there, and notice as usual, she is serving. Lazarus, who looks pretty good for a guy who'd been dead recently, is sitting there with them. I wonder if people occasionally reached over to check his pulse. Not sure about that. Mary is there. Mary, sweet Mary, who always saw with her heart first, is about to do something amazing, outlandish, foolish, you might say, extravagant. She comes into where Jesus was with an alabaster vase, little bottle filled with perfume. They called it nard. Might as well have been gold, because this nard was worth a small fortune. And before anyone can think or speak or act, Mary smashes the vase and she pours the perfume out on Jesus. And the whole house becomes filled with this extravagant fragrance. I don't know if you have any experience with nard. I certainly don't. Some current biblical scholars suggest that it was worth between $20,000 to $55,000 in our time. That's a lot. Did you notice that the house is also quickly filled with something else? Indignation, the righteous kind. the worst kind. It's Judas. This could have been sold and given to the poor. Instead, it has been wasted. You can hear a lot in the way Judas says it. And perhaps it wasn't just Judas. Maybe there were quick seconds and nodded heads from all over the room because it seemed like a good thing to say. Always so practical, these men. Probably they're still worrying about the campaign's bottom line. We know what Judas was worried about. But from what we now know, we can say very clearly that it was not wasted. It was worship. I love this story. And I wish I had more time to talk to you about it today, but I'm going to take just a little bit because, hey, you can turn this on and turn it off whenever you need to. This story paints clearly the two defining heart motivations that drive every human being. We see the heart of Judas. It's a heart of selfishness. It's a heart that only cares about what he can get out of it. Somebody once said, people like this are always tuned in to the station, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Besides the heart of Judas, though, contrastingly, you see the heart of Mary. It's the heart of selflessness. And her question is, what can I do for the sake of Jesus? The answer to the question of which one of those hearts describes yours is not that hard to come by, though it is often kind of hard to admit. Either we are self-serving or we are Christ-serving. Either we are manipulative or we are submissive. Either we are only willing to share the throne with Christ, or we are grateful, even if only from a distance, to be able to bow before him. Like the disciples, we often confuse what is waste and what is worship. It is just the opposite, often, from what it looks like. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said, the ones who want to be first in my kingdom will be last. And that's a great descriptor. You will always find first in line, lined up to get the what's in it for me party. Although they think they may have it all together and they take pride in where they sit and what they have accomplished, their lives, and sadly, too often their efforts for the kingdom are stingy. You might even say wasted where it counts most. Those who serve, on the other hand, those who stand in the shadows unseen, often unheralded, unthanked, unnoticed, those whose precious perfume is generously, extravagantly, outlandishly emptied and shared, whose only concern is for how much they can give. Their lives and their efforts are pleasing worship to the only one who is worthy of such extravagance. Jesus sets the bar pretty high. He said, "For the Son of Man did not come to earth to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." That is our standard as followers of Jesus, and Christ is our model. It is the antidote for me-itis. But that antidote is expensive, and it is very hard to swallow. Jesus lived it first to show us how, and then he offered it to us. He said, if anyone would be my disciple, he must first deny himself and then take up his cross and follow me. When he used these words and this description, at that point it was academic, it was philosophical, but not for long. It became just 4 days later as real as a crucifixion. And I would tell you today, as you decide which kind of person you're going to be, the cross is not about physical rewards or pensions. It's about nails. It is not about little occasional sacrifices, although many of our sacrifices are small ones. It's about dying. It's about breaking and emptying our vessels and pouring out our lives. One of my weaknesses is that I can tend to be a little bit cynical, a little sarcastic sometimes. And I either tend to see Judas in others, or I look for that in others, wondering what their game is. Or maybe I see myself sometimes with a little of the stripe of Judas in me. But I really don't believe that most people are like Judas. I believe that many of us, if not most of us who follow Christ, have Mary's heart. We have precious offerings of life and worship to give. We have hearts that are filled, and we want to be generous and extravagant in our own expressions of love to Christ and His church. We have the perfume, but for some reason, we just often can't bring ourselves to break the bottle. If we're not careful, we certainly can make church about coming to a building. Boy, don't we have a new perspective on that these days. But we do come to church each week, and we file in, sometimes like separate alabaster vases. We are contained and self-sufficient and encased and individually complete. Are our contents valuable? Yes. Do we have great potential in using them in service? Yes. Are the contents of our vases precious? Of course. But most of the time they are undisclosed, and there is no perfume emitting at all because we are unbroken. We come and we leave without being changed or changing anybody. And if we're not careful, we just exist as vases. We even comment on each other's vases. Nice vase you're wearing today. You look good in that vase. We relate on a very shallow external level, never opening up, never giving even a hint of what's inside. We deal in exteriors. But Mary would have none of that. Mary broke her vase. She didn't give Jesus just a little of it. She didn't just dab a little here and dab a little there and save the rest. She broke it and poured it all out. How shocking. How controversial. Now, was everybody doing it? Was it in style? How were they going about some sort of vase-breaking party? No, not at all. She just did it all by herself. And the result? All of the contents were forever released, and Mary could never have her precious nard for herself again. But it didn't matter to Mary. She shared her perfume, and Jesus and everyone else close was blessed. Some of them called it waste. She knew it was worship. Don't miss the fact, in this story, Mary is the only one that Jesus commends. He says to the indignant pensioners, "Leave her alone. She has done what she could." May the same be said about each of us. God bless you this Holy Week as you find creative ways to serve, to become the sweet-smelling fragrance of Christ. And may the peace of Christ, which passes all human understanding, guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
defense, my righteousness, O God.